Okay, so this is chapter 4, IM-1, grade repair test recovery. Where it says name, you're going to write your name. And then where it says teacher, you're going to write your teacher. So whoever your teacher is, so Miss Robinson, Miss Dew, Miss Torkelson, Mr. New, Mr. Lopez, Miss Rubio. If any of those are your teachers, you'll write their name here. So we're going to start off with lesson 1, which is 4.1. And this chapter talks about, we talk about correlation, so the relationship between two different things, and then different types of relationships that we'll see. So first off, we're going to talk about a scatter plot. So a scatter plot is a graph with points plotted to show possible relationship between two data sets. So remember, it's just a bunch of points that are scattered all over the place. And a correlation is a measure of the direction of the relationship between two variables. So there are three types of correlations that we're going to talk about in this chapter. And so if I look at my first picture of my scatter plot, you see how I'm kind of trending in a negative direction. My points are decreasing, they're going down. This is a negative correlation. And I'm going to abbreviate correlation as CORR. You are more than welcome to write the full thing, but I'm going to abbreviate it. If I look at my next picture, my next diagram, I can see that my points are trending in a positive correlation. So this is positive correlation. And then if you see that your points are not really trending in either negative or positive directions, there's no correlation between them. Your points are kind of all over the place. So here I would say that I have no correlation. So those are the three that we are going to focus on this chapter. All right, I'm going to look at the first example. So I'm talking about Raphael, who's preparing to study for his math midterm this week, and he wants to get a good grade on it. But he doesn't know how long to study for. He asks his fellow classmates for some help, as shown in the table below is the data he collected. Okay, so I want to make a scatter plot with the points that I have. So these are, this is my table, these are my points, and then here's my graph. This will be the x, and this will be the y. Okay, so before I label my points, I do want to label the x and the y axis. So I want to do that part first. The x-axis I will label as hours studies. So this is my x-axis, so hours studies. My y-axis is exam scores. So here I'm going to turn my paper and I'm going to write exam scores. So if your labels are not present on your graph, always make sure to include them. So then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plot all of my points. Okay, so 0, 60 is down here. And then I have 0.5, 65. 167. When it starts getting like in between, do your best just to guess where it is. 1.5, 61. And then I have 285. 2.5, 78. 390. And 3.5, 92. Okay, perfect. So all my points are plotted. Okay, B, it says describe the type of correlation you have. So if I look at my dots, I can see that they're trending in a positive direction. So for the type, this is a positive correlation. Okay, and then part C says write the corresponding correlation statement. So basically I want to write a statement talking about the type of correlation I have between the two things that I'm talking about. So there's a positive correlation between the hours that are studied and the exam scores. So based on the data that Raphael collected, he's saying that, okay, the more hours you study, your exam scores should be higher, right, according to the data. So I'm going to write, there is a positive correlation between hours studied and exam scores. And these are just the labels that were in my table, the ones that I also included on my graph. Okay, perfect. Once you have that, we're going to go ahead and turn to the next page. So there are two try-its on this page. I will do the first one with you, and then I'll have you try the second try-it by yourself. All right, so for the first one, it says Raymond and his wife Sarah opened a car wash and kept track of their weekly earnings as shown in the table and graph below. So here I have weeks after opening the car wash and the money that they have earned. And here are those points already plotted for you. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to label my X and my Y axis. So always check and see if the labels are there. So I'll make this X and I'll make this Y. So this is weeks after opening. And for the Y, I'm going to put the earnings. So I'll put that over here. Okay, so I labeled my X and my Y axis, perfect. Then I want to describe the type of correlation I have. So look at your dots and see how they're trending. I can see that they're trending upwards in a positive direction. So here I'm going to have a positive correlation. Okay, then I want to write a corresponding correlation statement. So that means what type of correlation I have, and then between the two things that I'm talking about. So I have a positive correlation between weeks after opening, and we're opening the car wash, and the earnings, so the money that they've made. Okay, so that's the sentence I'm going to write here. So there is a positive correlation between weeks after opening the car wash and earnings. So we're just describing the type of correlation between the two things that we're talking about. Okay, perfect. So the one at the bottom that talks about Mr. Lamb in a new car, I would like you to try by yourself. So I would like you to pause the video here so that you can try it. Once you feel like you have it, you can go ahead and play the video, and then I'll show you what the answers are for the problem at the bottom. Okay, so your first step was to label the X and the Y axis. So if you did, great. Your second step is to see what type of trend you have with your dots. Your dots are in a negative trend, so you have a negative correlation. Then for part C, there's a negative correlation between the age of a car and the value of a car. Okay, so all that's saying is as the car gets older, it's not worth as much because people want a newer car, so you're not going to get a lot of money for your older car. Okay, perfect. We are going to move on to the next page. Okay, so this section right here has all of the directions in order to find your linear regression equation. So, your first step is to sign out of your Chromebook and go to Apps. You're going to click on Desmos Test Mode, Graphing Calculator, and Start Test. Hopefully you've done this before when you did this chapter, so this is not new to you, all of these steps. Okay, once you're on Desmos, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to click on the plus symbol in the upper left corner. Then you're going to look for this picture where it says table, and then we're going to enter our data or our values. Once you do that, you can press this little magnifying glass that will zoom in on your points. Okay, and then step 4 is finding the line of best fit. Okay, so remember, to get that line or to get that equation, you have to do y1 tilde mx1 plus b. So there's a lot of things that we're going to type into Desmos, so I am going to have to switch my screen back and forth between Desmos and the notes. So just know that the information that I'm plugging into my data set or my table is this right here. So this is my x and this is my y. Okay, I'm going to follow all of these steps, but I'm plugging in these numbers, okay? So I'm going to switch my screen so that I can plug it in and I can show you. Okay, so here's my Desmos screen. I am going to press the plus sign, and I'm going to look for the picture with the table, and then I can press it. Now I have this empty table where I'm going to plug in the numbers that are on my piece of paper, right, in my note packet. So for the x side, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. That's just the x side. Then for the y side, I'm going to plug in my numbers. And make sure to take your time, because if you mess up one of the numbers, it will mess up your entire equation. Okay, so I've typed in all of my numbers into my table. You see how I don't see my points on here? Like, there are no points that I see. If you press this little magnifying glass, it'll zoom in on your points so that you can see them. Okay, perfect. So I can kind of see that they're trending downwards. This is a negative correlation. The second thing that I need to do is I need to type in my equation. The equation is the one that we wrote on our papers. Okay, so this is the y1 tilde mx1 plus b. To get the ones on the bottom, you don't have to do anything special. You just type in the letter and then you type in the number, and it'll automatically make it little. And so now I have the information that I need to plug into Desmos. Okay, so these are the numbers that I'm going to write on my paper. So I'm going to switch my screen so that you can see where I'm writing these numbers down. But it's these numbers that are right here, okay? All right. Okay, so then for m, here, let me zoom in a bit. For m, you have a big number, and I'm going to write all of it. I have negative 154.46429. Okay, I'm going to write the full thing. For b, I'm going to write everything that I see for b. So 1407.85714. And then for r, you have two r's. You have one that says r and one that says r squared. You want the one that's just r. Okay, and then I'm going to write 9908. Okay, perfect. Then we have to round these. Your m and your b will always be rounded to the nearest whole number. So meaning no more decimals. In order to round, you have to look at the number before the decimal. So that's the 4. And then I want to make an arrow to the 4 after that. Remember, if it's 0 through 4, it stays the same. If it's 5 through 9, it goes up. And the number that I'm referring to two numbers, okay? The underlined one will be the one that will change if needed. So if I look at the 4 is 0 through 4, so that means the underlined number will stay the same. So this is negative 154. Okay, let me try B. The number before the decimal is the 7, and I'm going to draw an arrow to the number after it. Okay, so I'm focused on both numbers. The 8 is 5 through 9, so it goes up. The thing that goes up is the 7. So it goes up to an 8. And the R is special. We round to 3 decimal places here, so to the thousands place. You look at your decimal, you count 3 numbers after the decimal. So 1, 2, 3. I'm going to draw an arrow under the 0, or a line under the 0, sorry, and an arrow to the number after it. Okay, the 8 is 5 through 9. So that means that the number that is underlined will go up by 1. So this becomes 0.991. Okay, your linear regression equation will be in the form of y equals mx plus b. But because we're rounding, we're not going to put equals, we're going to put about, or an approximation symbol. So it's kind of like a squiggly equal sign. Then we'll write mx plus b. Okay, and you want to use the rounded answers. So you want to use these answers that are rounded, these two. Okay, so your linear regression equation is going to be y is approximate to m. M is negative 154, x, and then your b is 1,408. For the type of correlation, here is where you're telling me if it's positive, negative, or no. And we saw on Desmos that it was in a negative trend. So this is a negative correlation. Okay, perfect. The last thing that we are going to do is we have to write a sentence interpreting the slope and the y-intercept. And here you have to be super careful, okay? So I have a lot of space underneath my lines, so I'm going to take some notes. Okay, I know that my y-intercept is at 1408. So remember, slope is m and y-intercept is b. Okay, my y-intercept is the same as my b. And my b is 1408. Okay, let's include our units. So my y is talking about volume in gallons. Okay, so this is gallons. Okay, the second thing that I want to take note of is my slope, which is my m. Keep in mind, your m is always your change in y over your change in x. Okay, let me talk about my units. So my y units are gallons, and my x is hours. Okay, the last thing I want to do is plug in what my actual slope is. So my slope here is negative 154. Okay, if it's not a fraction, you can make it a fraction by adding a 1 underneath. Okay, and I'm talking about the relationship between the hours that have passed and a pool that's beginning to drain, and we're seeing how much water is left in the pool. So I'm going to say something like starting with a volume of 1,408 gallons. Okay, that's my y-intercept, so I'm talking about that part first. And the thing that we're talking about is the pool, so I'm going to say the pool. And the pool, you see how my slope is negative? That means that the water is decreasing, so they're losing water in the pool. So I'm going to say the pool is losing 154 gallons of water. And then the 1 represents the hours, so it's every hour that it's losing that much water. So every hour. Okay, so we address the slope and the y-intercept. The 1,408 gallons, that's the y-intercept. Okay, so that's this part right here. So this is this. okay? And then the slope is losing 154 gallons of water every hour. That's the second part. So you have to address both parts in your problem. Okay, let's turn to the next page. Okay, so this is a try it. So one thing that I would like you to ignore is the like sentence at the beginning, because this is the same sentence as the previous problem, but we're not talking about pool water anymore. We're talking about hot dogs sold. So we have the time, the hour of the day, and then we have the number of hot dogs sold. So I want you to pause the video right here. I want you to type this into Desmos. Then when you unpause the video, we're gonna talk about these answers right here. I'm not gonna give you all the answers. I'm just gonna give you some of them because I would like you to plug it in on your own. Okay, so hopefully you plugged in your numbers. For M, I'm not going to tell you what I got, but I am going to tell you the rounded answer. So for the rounded answer, I got 2. For B, same thing. For the rounded answer, I got 8. That way you can practice plugging it into Desmos. And then for R, for the rounded version, I got 930. Okay, so my linear regression equation is going to be 2x plus 8. If you look at your dots on Desmos, you'll see that your points are trending in a positive direction. So this is a positive correlation. And we'll write the sentence together just because of the fact that the sentence at the top was the wrong set of information. Okay, so same thing. I want to talk about my y-intercept and my slope. My slope is my M, my y-intercept is my B. I don't have a ton of space at the bottom, so to be honest, I'll probably do it up here. So my y-intercept or my B is the 8. Okay, and I want to think about my units. My y-intercept is represented, here I'll put my x and my y, by the number of hot dogs sold. So the 8 is the number of hot dogs sold. That's the first part. The second part that I want to talk about is my M. So now I have my M. And so for my M, keep in mind that your M is always your Y over your X. My Y is the hot dogs. I don't have a lot of space, so I'm just going to write hot dogs. And my X is the time of the day. Okay, and then I want to include what my slope actually is. And my slope here is 2. And if it's not a fraction, you make it a fraction. So then this is 2 over 1. So the 2 represents the hot dogs that are sold, and the 1 represents the time, which is the hour of the day. Okay, so then when I write my sentence, I'm going to talk about my start, which is the 8s. So I'm going to say starting with 8 hot dogs sold. Okay, the number of hot dogs sold is going up by 2, and the hours, right, the time of the day is going up by 1. Okay, so I'm going to say, starting with 8 hot dogs sold, as the number of hot dogs sold goes up by 2. So the time, so hour of the day, is going up by 1 because it's positive. So I like to keep the units the same. So like I really try to stick to these words. I don't try to change them so that I don't make it more difficult for myself. So the y-intercept is this 8. That's this. These starting with 8 hot dogs sold. Your slope is this 2. Okay. The hot dogs sold goes up by 2. The time of the day goes up by 1. So you have to talk about both things, and you have to be specific and include the units. So that's where we're going to stop today, and then we'll pick up the rest of the chapter tomorrow.